Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
During the course of this series, I've been able to bring in some of my smartest and most amusing friends to contribute. But I have other friends who aren't particularly interesting or attractive, and they keep pestering me to be on the show. So I'm going to devote an entire program to these hangers-on just to get them off my back. Thank you. A few weeks ago, I was talking to an audience, and when we got to the Q&A, the first question, guy in the front row said, I said, yes. He said, do you think Matthew Syed should be our next Prime Minister? And I said, yes. So thanks for being here, Matthew.
It's a pleasure. This person, did he bear a passing resemblance to me? Was it my brother?
No. No, it was, the nice thing was there was a kind of general from these 400 people. So I don't know where to start with you. Do we start with ping pong or Sunday Times?
I get very offended when they call it. It makes it sound like a jumped-up parlour game, roughly equivalent to tiddling. So as we know, and I hope people in this room know, it's a globally competitive sport.
Tell our dear friends why we're talking about table tennis.
So this is a slightly odd thing to admit, but I was the British table tennis #1 for 10 years.
10 years?
And 3 times Commonwealth champion. The weird thing now, I'm 52, and at the time I was playing table tennis, this was like the dominant thing in my life. I'd wake up thinking about table tennis. I'd practice before school, after school, holidays, weekends. Getting to the top at table tennis was my raison d'etre. And my parents were behind it because I was passionate about it. I had a wonderful coach. I grew up in suburban Reading. And it turns out, I should mention this, that where I grew up in suburban Reading, the street, Silverdale Road, had more than half the top table tennis players in the country.
What? What? More than half the top in the country?
And there were 50,000 paid subscribers to the governing body, about 1 million recreational players. So it was an unbelievable concentration of fantastic ping pong with whackers, right? In this totally ordinary...
Silverdale Road. All right. So what's that about?
So the explanation, it formed the start of my first ever book, Bounce. I was trying to deconstruct what it is that enables people to get good at what they wish to get good at.
Yes.
And obviously talent plays a factor, but opportunity. At the school, Aldrington School, there was a primary school teacher who was a ping pong fanatic and the best coach in the country. And just by Silverdale Road, there was a club. Now, in most parts of the country, you want to play table tennis, you have to go to the municipal sports centre.
Yeah.
But you can't go to you're waiting for the yoga to finish or the band. But here, there was a purpose-built 24-hour club. It was only one table and it was a wooden shack, really. But we all on the street had a set of keys. So we could go
anytime.
We could go and we're clocking up and we're practising and we're playing, we're loving it. And this coach is coming in and giving us the perfect technique and so a totally ordinary group of young kids.
So wait a minute, what age are you?
So I started playing at 9.
9?
And I became the top player in my age group at about 11. And then it dominates my life through till the age of 33.
Yeah.
And it's only then, as I'm slowing down, that I realised my father was telling the truth when I said I want to leave school after my O-levels. He said, yeah, but you can't play table tennis. So you're going to be retired a long time. And then I'm thinking, right, I have to reinvent. And then I go into writing. Having got to the end of the career, of table tennis and thinking, what a brilliant career I've had. I look back on it now. I think, what on earth was I doing? What was I doing? You know, you've got this tiny white ball, and you know, the last 5 years I'm trying to improve my technique, and I moved from like 23 in the world to 22. What was the point? Who cares? You know, what was I thinking of? There were so many other things to do.
This is what I find sometimes. I just think the extraordinary obsession that you seem to need to become absolutely top class. It's one of the things I don't like about writing. It's about the only thing I don't like about writing, is at some point it always becomes obsessional.
Yes.
You know, and Picasso did not stop at 3 o'clock to play tennis. You know, you need that kind of obsession, I think, unless, you know, to get right up there.
I think that's right. And I think it's a shame sometimes when people say, you know, this person hasn't had a good work-life balance, isn't that kind of morally reprehensible? But you look at the Wright brothers, who created powered flight. You read the biographies and the autobiographies. They were absolutely fanatical about getting this thing off the ground, or Newton, or Marie Curie.
That's right.
Or, you know, in some Tiger Woods. It wasn't actually a healthy life to try and become the best golfer.
Well, I think that's the trouble. So many of the greatest artists were pretty neurotic. But of course, that's because they were obsessional. There was no balance there at all.
But there are certain activities where these people probably have tough lives, they're neurotic, you know, they get burnout, but they give to society a new technology, a new way of thinking, a great piece of art.
Yes.
You can look back on your life and say, right, Faulty Towers, Life of Brian...
Say the name again.
Fish Called Wanda. And these other brilliant, you know, at least, am I right in thinking that you look back... I can't look back on table tennis. I can find anything. No one watches me on YouTube. The 2 clips that are out there smashing against Jano Vivalda. This is not a legacy.
Now, when I asked you to come on, I said to you, is there something you would particularly want to talk about? Now's your chance.
Is something that I think we don't talk about enough. And I think because it's a bit depressing, but actually we need to confront difficult truths. And it's that as a civilization, we crossed a very interesting Rubicon in the 1950s. We had developed the power to destroy ourselves as a species. So the number of nuclear weapons that were on the planet in the 1950s and since, and still today, was sufficient to destroy humanity many times over.
You notice Putin was boasting that he'd got more than we have?
I think he's right about that.
Oh, he probably
I think Putin has more.
But I don't think you need many to cause a bit of a problem.
Exactly. What's fascinating is that science is an inherently unpredictable trajectory.
Yeah.
We don't know what scientists are going to discover next. They don't know either. By definition, they're going into the terrain of the unknown. The same with technology. And yet we have now developed ever more technologies that confer an existential risk on the species. One that's come up recently is artificial intelligence, generalised AI may pose a threat to humanity. But there's also, for example, bacteriological warfare.
Yeah.
We know from COVID that you could easily manufacture, presumably, a pathogen with a long incubation period, but a very high infection fatality rate. And if a scientist using genetic sequencing was able to do that and unleash it, it could kill billions of people within months. And as I understand it, that we are moving much... The democratisation of technology means that we're conferring more power on individuals. And in a population globally of 8 billion people, there's always going to be fanatics, psychopaths, people who, for whatever reason, are willing to inflict damage on the rest of humanity. It seems to me we are not giving any attention to this at all. And what worries me is I sometimes worry that the woke and anti-woke debate is just a gigantic piece of Freudian displacement. It's almost like the big challenge of existential risk is so big that let's just have a chat about these completely irrelevant ephemera and we don't have to deal with it.
Well, that's what the internet is looking like more and more. Even the news sites that I used to go to get more trivial every month.
Right. It's almost like when the world reached a place after 250,000 years of humanity where we actually now realistically could destroy ourselves certainly within 50 years. The former Astronomer General said this is mankind's last century. He wrote a book on the topic. Many of the people that I bump into in academic circles are convinced we won't make it to the next century. And yet the whole of popular culture is kind of funny videos of people falling over on the internet, in the political debate, is thrashing around in the shallows of decadence and superficiality.
Anything else scaring the excrement out of you?
Well, the characters in this room scare me enormously.
Yeah.
There is something intimidating.
You know they're all robots, right?
Are they AI?
Yeah, all of them. They were ones that had gone a bit wrong.
It's one of the most...
So we got them cheap.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Well, thank you, Matthew. We'll pick up this conversation again later on.
Thank you, John. Great to see you.
Now, as I expect you've heard, we've had a lot of complaints about the music, but I think it's quite good. And I'm going to chat to Ben Castle now, who wrote it. I'm very, very pleased to have you because of your dad.
Oh, that's nice.
Tell me about Roy.
Well, he was a lovely dad to have been gifted with.
He could do anything, couldn't he? He was a wonderful dancer, he could sing, he could play musical instruments, he could play sketches. He was just wonderful. He was one of my favourite performers in my youth.
Oh, that's amazing.
Really loved him. Every time he came on, there was a kind of cheery freshness about him, and I just adored him. So it's great to have you here doing the music.
Oh, thank you.
I want to ask you...
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But what I want to know, you play a massive number of instruments. What have we got here? Those are drums, right?
Yeah, those are drums. That's the
a
electric
cello.
bass.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now, these look very old. Are they Roman or Etruscan? Or...
The saxophone is the one the Normans played.
Really?
Yeah, this very one.
At the time they built the castle?
Yeah, it was actually left here. They left it here.
They left it?
I think they thought they might have another gig the following year.
Yeah.
And then
they never came back.
We all know what happened.
And what is that? Now, that's not a violin, no?
I don't think so. When I bought it, it said flute on the
I heard of flute.
on the package.
I heard of a right.
Yeah, that's it. And this is an alto flute. So. Henry Mancini used these a lot in his Pink Panther themes, and it's.
You see, what I find astounding, Ben, is that you just pick that thing up and suddenly something quite beautiful happens.
Well, I still find it astounding as well. Well, I hope something beautiful happens. It's not always the case.
What I'm interested in is the music affects me really emotionally. That's what I want from music.
Yeah.
And a lot of my friends say you don't like music. I say, no, I don't like a lot of music. I prefer total silence to a lot of modern music, you know?
Yeah.
So what else have you got there that you can demonstrate anything on?
So, yes, this is the saxophone.
It was you doing that with your fingers, wasn't it?
It was just a little cassette machine I've got in there, yes.
Oh,
So just to make me look good.
I just don't know how people can do this.
For me, I almost feel guilty every day that my hobby is my career.
Yeah.
Because I love it.
Well, at least with a dad like yours, you weren't being told to get a proper job.
Yeah, that's it. He would have been very upset if I'd become a heart surgeon or something.
Now, play something just at the end, which is the double bass?
The double bass.
Oh, that's that one.
That's this one, yes. This is the
clariphone. Right.
And I have a Cleesophone in my pocket, just being a prototype. Well, actually, this is called the nose flute. But with this, you're blowing with your nose, and the shape of your mouth determines the note.
Unbelievable. Is that, now, Beethoven didn't write a concerto for that.
It's still to come out if he did.
Yeah. It'll be found one day at one of the papers.
People are looking into it.
Just do the theme, come on. Birdland. I love you.
Oh, I love you too.
Thanks.
Thanks so much, John.
I'm Andrew Doyle, executive producer of the Dinosaur Hour, and Lewis Schaefer with me here. You were the maitre d' in the Dinosaur Hour.
No, I was the star of the entire show, and I think people are going to see that when they.
You were.
They're going to see
we
it.
cut you out a lot.
You know what? If my mother was still living, she would be furious.
She would, but she's not, and I knew that was okay.
No, but I am in the opening. I hope you don't cut out the opening section.
No, you're in the opening section.
I'm in the opening section.
And of course, working with John Cleese, that must be exciting.
Well, that was amazing, really. I didn't appreciate it at the time, but then I'm sitting there working with him. I'm thinking, this is John Cleese.
Yeah. I really love Ben Castle. I think he's a fantastic musician, and he was really great to work with on the show.
Yeah.
And I also really liked his dad. It's nice that they talked about Roy Castle as well.
Right.
That was a really lovely conversation, because I've always been jealous of people who can play musical instruments, you know? I tried to play the violin as a child, but I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And I had a horrible violin teacher who was very cruel.
Well, especially, I was a little bit scared when I was watching it, because I thought to myself, here's a guy who's actually achieved something. He's an amazing musician, and you're talking about the guy's dad. I mean,
yeah, but you know, that's fair. But that's John wanted to do that because he was such an admirer of his father.
Ben Castle.
Yeah.
See, I'd never heard of the guy.
But Ben he can play so many different instruments as well. I'm jealous of it. A healthy jealousy, not a nasty jealousy.
Yeah, I don't know where that comes out of. I think it's practice, right? Of course it's practice.
I don't have time.
You've never practiced.
I've never practiced.
Because you've always relied on your wit.
Yeah.
Basically, you're as lazy as I am, I think.
Witty people can be lazy.
Yes.
Because they give the illusion of
me,
aptitude.
I seem like I'm not proficient, because I'm not.
You seem like a mess.
Yeah, a mess.
Insofar as you're I don't mean that in a rude way, but you're quite chaotic.
But you've gotten away with murder, and that's why they've let you produce this whole thing. You ever think to yourself that I was blessed with a superior intellect?
I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah.
I wouldn't describe myself as relative to what? I don't have a superior intellect relative to Einstein.
We don't know. Einstein didn't have an extremely high IQ, actually.
Really?
Really, from what they say, yeah, no, he didn't.
What about Matthew Syed, this conversation that John has with Matthew Syed? I think that's interesting. He talks about becoming the country's best ping pong player. Oh no, he said don't call it ping pong. Table tennis player.
To give it a little bit of classiness.
Yeah, but then he realised when he'd done it that there's no point. Well, there's no legacy there, but he'd spent all this time. Do you feel like that sometimes with your career, you know, because you spent all this time cultivating your comedy career? And do you think at one point when you're older you'll think, why didn't I, become a shoemaker?
Yes, but for a different reason than Matthew Syed. He was upset because he had only 2 little bits of video on the internet. I'm afraid I've got too many bits of video.
There's a lot of you out there
on the internet. It would have been better.
It's
very incriminating.
Yeah,
so,
some of those websites.
And who knows how we're doing here? This could be a royal mess. I think I was really impressed by him.
He's brilliant, isn't he?
Yeah, and I even checked to see what street he grew up on.
Oh, Silverdale Road.
Silverdale Road. Yeah, I went and looked. It was quite a nice street. Yeah.
Well, you went on Google Maps and had a look.
I went on Google Maps.
You're creepy, aren't you? Sometimes.
Because I thought to myself, if someone wanted to check where I lived, 9 Essex Road, right next to New York.
There we go.
The Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese, on GBNews.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life: your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Are Queer, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And now, Sir Trevor McDonald. Thank you so much for doing this silly show.
Great pleasure.
Real pleasure. You see, what fascinates me about you, Sir Trevor, is that you've been working in British television since 1973.
It's a very long time.
50 years.
Yeah.
What I want to know is, how has it changed over that time?
My impression is that everything happens much more quickly now. And you don't have as much time to make up your mind about what you say and how you're going to present what you say. And it's not easy anyway these days to get a fair idea of what's going on. in some situations. You have to work very hard at discovering.
I mean, one of the things that was
truth of
remarkable about you is that you always wanted to get out there and find out what was really happening on the ground. I mean, you went straight off to Northern Ireland.
I wanted to go to Northern Ireland, I must confess here, partly for personal reasons. I was employed by ITN, and I had absolutely no reason why they gave me this job. And I wanted to make sure that I was doing what everybody else was doing.
Yeah.
In other words, to put it very bluntly, I didn't want to be the token black man on ITN. I wanted to do what everybody else was doing. And as you say, it resulted in my going to Northern Ireland, which was probably one of the most extraordinary things I've ever done. I'd never heard a bomb go off before I went to Belfast. I could hardly spell Kalashnikov. I didn't know what that word meant. And here was I thrown into this situation. But I learned a lot.
What did you learn, though? When you're in a situation like that with violence all around you, what do you learn?
I began to understand what the problems were all about. And I'll just give you one example. There were always difficulties about the so-called marching season.
Yeah.
And I thought, what's the problem about marching? You could march wherever you like. That's not the point. The Protestants wanted to march down the Catholic areas. The nationalists, or the Catholics, wanted to march down the Protestant areas. There was almost a kind of aggression to the politics. There was a very strong kind of religious base to some of this. I remember once, I frequently say to my friends, I stumbled into an argument about mixed communities and mixed races and mixed areas. And I hadn't got hold of exactly what was happening. And I said, I don't understand what your problem was about mixed areas or mixed communities, you know. And I said, I have a mixed marriage, for example. And they said, is your wife Catholic? I said, no, she's white. But immediately, you see, they thought there was a religious bias to everything. That was what I took away from
I'm kind of interested, though, whether you had, whether you learned anything about human nature from that kind of thing. And also from, well, let me ask you, you interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
Yeah. Saddam Hussein was a fascinating interview in the fact that he had not done many, and I think he was the only one that he did for British TV. So I had the weight of expectation on me that I was the only one who was going to be able to see him. So I was terrified. He had a pretty awful reputation. Somebody told me, in fact, that there was one meeting at which some minister began to voice a disagreement about something with him. Saddam Hussein took the minister out, shot him, continued the meeting as though nothing had happened. And so I was terrified about doing this. But
you weren't physically frightened.
No, you had to, you know, man up and
but
not.
What was the fear? Was it just being with someone who was so ruthless?
I thought that I would say something which he would not like, and he would say, I did not like this, and it would get a little awkward. Nothing like that happened. What I learned was that it was so rare for people to see him being talked to and being asked to, you know, being made to answer questions. There were about half a dozen of his ministers sitting around my interview, and I got a little annoyed, and I said, what are you guys doing here? Don't you have anything else to do on an evening? And they took me aside and they said, you don't quite understand, do you? We never see him being asked questions which he's made to answer. And then, leading on from that, at the end of the interview, I went back to my hotel suite and discovered that there were about half a dozen people from the Ministry of Information in my hotel suite drinking my whiskey, and which didn't please me too much. And they said, how was it? And I went on about the interview and, you know, what I said and how he responded and so on. And they were quite nonplussed about this until I discovered that what they were really saying to me was, what was he like? It took me a little bit to understand that. They had never met him. They had never been in the same room with the president of Iraq. So he was a dictator who kept a long way from his people. His edicts went out.
But this is why dictatorships always go wrong, because in the end, they're only told what people think they want to hear.
That's right. That's right. And
tell me about the greatest, Nelson Mandela.
I found him one of the most extraordinary people I'd ever met. I couldn't understand how someone who had spent 27 years behind bars could emerge so conspicuously unbitter about anything that had happened to him. And I had sort of very good reason to think about that even more profoundly when I met him after the first interview 5 years later, when there was the South African the Rugby World Cup, which was being held in South Africa. And I went to do an interview with him very early in the morning, one day of the matches. And he said, could you have the lights turned down? And we did. And he said, could you turn them down a little bit more? And we did. And he said, just a little tweak down again. And I said, you know, Mr. President, the problem is this is television and we need the lights. And if we turn them down anymore, they would not be able to see you or me when this is transmitted. And he apologized immediately. He was always extremely gracious. And he said, no, I have had problems with my eyes and so on. I've had splinters in my eyes. And he then went on to say, from breaking rocks on Robben Island. And I thought, looking at this presidential figure, I couldn't actually construct in my mind the scene when he'd been made to break rocks on Robben Island. But yes, that's what happened. And yet he never dwelt on any of that. I had forced it out of him with this told story about the lights. And so what I found about him was that he had this view that he could play a part in changing the South African system. I challenged him on this because I thought, you know, I'd been to South Africa before, and I thought they were pretty implacable about what they wanted to do with their country. And I thought it'd be very difficult for any one man, even Mandela, to change this. And he said to me, and I've always remembered this, he said, if you're prepared to sit down and talk seriously, then everything is possible. And I said, no, but not everything is possible. Some of the peripheral things are possible, but the fundamental principles remain and they can't be changed. And he said, no, everything is possible if you're prepared to sit down and talk seriously and to compromise. And for somebody who had been put behind bars for 27 years, coming out and talking about the ability to compromise, if I'd been in prison for 27 days, compromise would not be the first thing on my mind on coming out. And he was able to do that with that conviction. And it worked to some extent, you know?
Yes,
He changed the face of South Africa with the cooperation of people who began to see the virtue of doing this, like the clerk.
Quite a good
the clerk
job.
did very well.
Yeah.
He did very well. And they both got the Nobel Prize.
Yes, that was good.
That's right.
That was good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
It was nice having Trevor McDonald on the set. You have a personal connection with Trevor McDonald.
Yes, I know him because he came and saw me perform when I performed at the Arts Theatre in...
Now, is this one of your true anecdotes or one of your made-up anecdotes?
It's 100% true.
No, because every time some famous person dies, you put a post on your Facebook page saying that you knew them well and you were really close. And that's never true.
Well, he hasn't died yet. No, it is true.
So he actually came along to watch you.
Well,
At the arts. He saw your name in a magazine, thought, I want to see Louis Schaefer.
Well, he came to see Reginald T. Hunter.
You were supporting Reginald
And
T.
I was
Hunter?
supporting Reginald T. Hunter. And I met him.
And did he enjoy your set?
He didn't even see, he just said hello. He just waved.
Well, that's what people say when they don't want to comment on the content.
It wasn't that, I probably wasn't that good. But Reg was so excited to meet him.
Yeah.
And I think he's a beloved character in this country.
Yeah, because he's of that veteran newscaster school, you know, that old school, like he's seen so much, he's been everywhere, interviewing Saddam Hussein. He was the only one who was allowed to interview Saddam Hussein, the only British journalist who ever did that.
That's not what makes him beloved. What makes him beloved is he's been around for 40 years. He's like an old guy.
It's just staying power.
Yeah. It's, what's that saying?
A stitch in time saves 9? Is that the saying?
Yeah,
I know there's lots of sayings, but you have to be specific. If you're going to raise a saying, you have to then be able to say what the saying is.
Don't you put the pressure on me. The saying is, it's like in Chinatown, you know, old buildings, and it's if a guy stays along long enough, they become beloved.
Oh, I see what you mean. So it's a saying you can't remember, but the principle is if you stick around long enough, you'll become beloved.
Right. And he was beloved years ago.
He's also very good at his job. That was the thing.
Yeah.
You know? And it can't be easy doing that sort of thing. It is sort of what I do, but not on the same scale, you know?
It is what you do, and I don't know what he does. I know what you do, and what you do incredibly well.
That's very kind of you.
So don't think that he's any better than you are.
I think he is a lot better than me.
You want to get into an argument over this?
The Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese, on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And now I'm going to have a chat with our resident pollster, Frank Luntz. Frankie, thank you for being here, dear man.
I wouldn't miss this for the world.
Oh, that's lovely. Now, when I met you the second time in an elevator, you were amused that I just read your book.
Yes,
right?
You made me speechless.
And what was the name of the book?
Words That Work.
So explain why your expertise helped you to write that book.
So my job is to understand how Americans feel. It's actually a global experience. And to know the power of words to change minds, to change hearts, to be able to communicate to you.
But how did you discover that?
I discovered it by accident. I had been told, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Go away.
So there's a difference, by the way, between he's a worker versus an employee. So I realized how well dressed he is. Clearly polyester, not natural fibers. If you call him a worker, that means he works 9 to 5. If you call him an employee, that suggests that he has a career. That suggests something significant. So even though you may not like him, I could understand why.
Yeah.
Just by changing how you label him, You change his relationship with you and your relationship with him.
Yeah, I get that. But what I'm interested in is how do you know which is the better? You said to me once, you said, never say you write anything, always say you craft it.
Because writing is pedestrian.
Yeah.
The two gentlemen playing chess right now, they can be writers. But if you craft something, that suggests something special, an expertise.
But how did you acquire your expertise? I mean, were you always listening to this? You were at Oxford for a year.
I hated it.
Yeah, I know, but
I hated every minute, and you can see
hated every minute
that I wear the Union Jack with pride. I'm an Anglophile. I love being an Anglophile. I love your work. I love the comedy. I love the culture. And I look at my country, and I'm so disappointed. And I hate these Americans who come to a foreign country and bash their own. And I find myself doing it because we're not the same country. Don't move that, by the way. Put that pawn back. That is not the move. The move would have been your queen. Come on, put the pawn back.
Yeah, the queen.
And don't screw that up. And by the way, I just want you all to know, the nuns behind us,
yes,
they're cheating. I'll let you deal with that.
You cheating, Pamela?
Yes.
She nodded. How'd you know? But we were
because I watched this
when
stuff.
When you were at Oxford, were you already noticing this business about the words? It's fascinating. But where did the impulse come from to study this, to see which words are good and which aren't? Where did it come from?
It came from a Speaker of the House named Newt Gingrich. And he said to me, we don't have a language guy. We have a theoretician, but we don't have someone who focuses on the messaging. Would you be willing to do that? This happened in 1993. And the first examination I did of this was the idea of the difference between an orphanage and a foster home. A foster home sounds nicer, but it's actually much worse than an orphanage. And Newt Gingrich, right around Christmas time of 1994, talked about the importance of supporting orphanages. And the public condemned him. He lost his significant support because all they could think of was Tiny Tim and A Christmas Carol, and it made Newt Gingrich into the Grinch. That's Gingrich, the Grinch that stole Christmas. That was the first time that I studied language. If you call something an estate tax, you're rich. If you call it a death tax, you just died. If you called it climate change, it's not so bad. If you call it global warming, it's really frightening. Even in the stuff that we drink. You call this a carbonated, it means that it's got chemicals. You call this sparkling, it's a fun taste of the mouth. If you call it gambling, you're addicted. If you call it gaming, that's Las Vegas.
That's very good. Those are good examples, because I always wonder when people buy pre-owned cars, whether they would have bought a used car.
Yes, but you missed it. It's certified pre-owned. If it's certified, they're guaranteeing that someone beat the crap out of your car. But the word certified is significant. It's powerful. And we see it right now, even in terminology of the government. The respect that people have. It's not about diversity. It's not about inclusion. It's about respect. If I show you respect, that's the highest value that I can demonstrate to you. I respect your craft. I respect your humor.
You got this information from a poll?
From polling and focus groups and asking questions. Which has a bigger impact on you? Which matters more?
Oh, you were asking individuals?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
A typical survey. He's a really bad player. I wouldn't pay attention to him.
Why don't you resign now? You can go and have a drink. What?
It's just so distracting. And even looking around this room, I see that he's wearing a white jacket, which he should not do until the 4th of July. I see that the two of them are drinking with hats inside, and they should not be wearing them. I see the nuns back there. I noticed that they're cheating. You have to look. And this is no joke. You actually study how people look at you. When I talk to you, you make eye contact. Most people don't. Most people look away.
No, that surprises me. Most people don't.
Most people don't because they're intimidated by it. So when they see that someone's looking at them, they'll look down, they'll look around. They don't pay direct attention to it. I see how this room is constructed. I see how far the tables are from each other. I see where the lights are placed.
You see, one of the things I do in this area is in this series, I'm trying to be closer to the people I'm interviewing because I think that gives a slight sense of intimacy and people are more likely to forget the surroundings and get involved in the conversation.
And what's different from this is most shows that are discussion-oriented, you're on a couch or you've got a chair and the guests are on a couch. This is much more personal. You've got your chair, I've got my chair.
Yeah.
This is how you elicit how people really feel. We're afraid to say what we really think. We're afraid of being canceled. We're afraid of being judged. And your effort is to bring out the truth. And there's nothing more important than the truth. And this is why I'm in Great Britain and not in the US, because the US has lost respect for the truth. Our politicians, our business leaders, the substance of these conversations are so important right now. But we say things to make ourselves look good rather than what we truly feel. And the challenge right now is, how do you tell the truth so that people trust you? How do you know that what you read is the truth? How do you know that what you see on the BBC or ITN or Channel 4, how do you know that it's the truth? Because if we lose the truth, we lose democracy.
Absolutely.
My greatest fear, and you have it in Britain with your former Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. We have it in America with Donald Trump. But the two of them, by the way, they're not the same.
They have a lot of similarities.
Boris has written more books than Trump has read.
Oh, yes.
Trump has colored in more books than Boris has written. There's something I want you to see. I don't know if there's a way to get my computer.
Yes, Lewis, can we get Frankie's computer? Oh, look. He's having a little drink, aren't you, sweetie?
You know, that reminds me of your second wife.
Okay, tell me what this is about, and we can show it to the audience, too.
We asked the question about what mattered most to democracy, to the future of the country, and nothing matters more than the truth. This has been my life for the last 10 years. I'm the passionate pursuit of the truth, no matter what.
If I don't have the truth, how on earth do I know how to vote or what movement to attach myself?
And the good news is that's exactly what the population thinks as well. Even more than transparency, even more than integrity, without the truth, you cannot have a strong democracy, you cannot have an effective media, you cannot have a performing academia. Nothing can function without the truth. This allows us to say to our elected officials, look me straight in the eye and tell me what really is, not what you want it to be.
But are any of them going to do that, Frankie? I mean, they're all minding their own backs, aren't they?
There are some things more important than an election. There are some things more important than making people feel good.
Yes, but they've got to be very special people before they feel that, don't they?
But we have to hope that we have enough of them.
Yeah?
Clearly, it's not necessarily in the leadership in your country or my country. And it's why I left my country. It's why I'm here right now.
So have you basically switched residence?
Every year I come here for 2 or 3 months to get my bearings again, to get my...
Oh, he switched it on for us again. I do notice here, Frankie, down bottom right, all the things that are least important are seriousness,
tolerance, reconciliation, dignity.
And clarity?
Yes.
How can you have truth without clarity? This is very strange.
I do find it interesting that even your cat understands the importance of this. John, you make people laugh. You make people feel good for 30 minutes at a time, or in a movie, 90 minutes, 2 hours. But so many people are so afraid of the future, are so concerned about their families, about freedom, and they don't have the answers to fix it. The economic challenges right now gave rise to Boris Johnson in this country and Donald Trump in America. The feeling of being ignored, forgotten, left behind, even betrayed. These are serious emotions that lead to January 6th, that lead to conflict. And if we don't address them, then even a master showman, a master comedian, a craftsman with words, even we will fail.
Do you think there's anything that I or you or somebody listening in can do now to help to make things just a tiny bit better.
You have to demand that people look you straight in the eye and tell you the way things are. You have to insist that where you get your news is accurate, factual, and comprehensive. So you get all sides of the story.
Yes.
When I first met you, I was pretty partisan. And I was very careful about having...
Well, you were center-right when you first met me.
But I was partisan. And I'm not partisan anymore. My fear is that the left does it and the right does it.
Oh, yeah.
The right may do it better than the left, but they both try to do it. And in the end, we have to reject that. We have to say enough is enough. In fact, the word that I love more than any other word in the English language was reconciliation.
Yeah.
The idea that these British chess players and these alcoholics sitting right there and the nuns that are behind me can actually get along.
Yeah.
That was my goal.
Have fun together, yeah.
And now it's empathy.
Yeah.
It's knowing where you come from, knowing what your challenges are, and actually showing some heart. Not just head, but heart, too.
Yeah. One other question. Will you shut up?
Yes. You can ask me anything.
I've always wanted to say that to someone. Now, when you were a kid in Reading, tell me you were a person of colour. You were regarded as a person of colour. How were you treated by the whites?
Well, so the school I went to, you leave the school and there's a little parade of shops. And on the door of and this was for years, there was and do you remember the NF? The National Front?
Oh, yeah.
It was kick effing peas out of this country, vote NF.
Your first reaction is a shock, but do you kind of finish up thinking rubbish?
Well, at the time, I definitely struggled with the fact... The first girl I asked to date me, Yvonne, and this would have been in the second year of senior school, it took a bit of courage, ping pong wasn't unfashionable, but, and she said, pick on someone of your own colour. And I was, like, heartbroken. I really, really liked her, and I thought, this is a disaster. And I remember I'd go to bed and wake up having dreamt that I was white, and wake up thinking, damn, I'm still brown. This is bad. And I had two wonderful parents, brilliant, loved me, and it was. I wouldn't want to say anything negative about my childhood in that sense, but yes, I was conscious of it all the time, and the NF was still there. I went to first football game at Reading. The P word was shouted liberally. That was the first club game.
At you or at other people or what?
It was at me and more generally, because it was quite unusual to have a brown-skinned kid going to a football game in club football. The first national team match that I went to was... This is a test of your knowledge here.
All right.
It was England against Czechoslovakia, and the first ever black person to play in the England men's national team. Do you have any inkling of who that... Because you know your sport. It's a defender.
No,
Viv Anderson. Viv Anderson. And my mum takes me and Andy, my brother. We go to Wembley. I remember getting a hot dog from the van, and we thought it was very extravagant to buy. It was like 20p or something. And we got in, and the N-word was liberally used, and monkey chants. So John, growing up,
Let me ask you this: why do they do it?
Fear of the other, a way of bonding with each other. At school, there was a teacher who used the P word to my face many, many times. But you know what I would say?
But you see, what is interesting to me is we're saying,
yes,
right?
But you even
it's just short, yes. Even saying
that is now.
Is that right?
But that for me, that's not a positive.
It's a contraction. Why does it have this extraordinarily nasty atmosphere connected?
That's a really good question. So that's worth sort of analysing. At school, when I would hear this word, people would say that's no worse than you saying Ingy for an English person or Brit. Why is it worse? The reason it is fundamentally different is I knew that my dad, hard-working, really charismatic, but brilliant human being, was working in the civil service. And he worked hard. He wanted to provide for his family. He wanted to give us, as his children, opportunities. He was passionate about it. But he couldn't get promoted. He would never get invited to social events.
Really?
At the water cooler, if people, or the corridor they were talking, he would come and they would dissipate. And it was incredible. So in my mind, I'm thinking, I live in a society where empirically, at the moment, much less now, and I'll come back to that, one's colour influences one's life chances in an arbitrary way. So someone drawing attention to my skin colour with the word, the P word, can you see that comes freighted with a whole range of other things that are deeply pernicious to me and to my family and to my father's progress and to my progress. So saying to someone you're a Brit, you're drawing attention to someone who's it's brilliant to be a Brit in Britain. But using the P word has totally different connotations.
Yeah.
Why the N word was so stigmatising in America.
You see, what I think I've been insulated all my life from this kind of thing. My dad was in India in the early 20s, and he had a condescending attitude to the Indians, but he liked them and told affectionate stories about them and about how the English behaved in those days, which was not vicious or horrible so much, not in his experience, but was more like the rugby teams on Saturday night when they've had too much beer, that sort of thing. And so I grew up with him. I remember him sometimes inviting people of colour to his house just to have tea. And my mother was a bit surprised. She didn't mind. The only people that we hated were the Welsh, which is hilarious.
Just over the border. Right?
Yeah, well, we could just look across the water, the Bristol Channel, and there they were. So it was very, to me, and then I went on to Clifton College where we had a Jewish house, and a lot of my friends were Jewish. I used to organise teams from Northtown to play soccer with a tennis ball over them because they had a great court. And I never really saw anything very nasty. I saw superiority, not to the Jewish house, because they were cleverer than us, but, you know, I never saw anything horrible. And then when I hear you talking, it's so aimless. It's so stupid.
But you know, John, I would say, and this is based on deep personal experience, we've got so much better in this country.
Yes, we have.
I think we're one of the most, possibly the most progressive, racially tolerant countries in the world. I'm never, ever conscious of
You'll have to be very careful of saying that, because we're not supposed to admit anything's getting better.
But this is a tragedy to me.
Yeah.
I think the story of racism in this country is a good news story over the course of my lifetime. Relative to other nations, we're doing tremendously well. It is absurd to compare ourselves to the United States, for example.
Yeah.
It still has deep-seated cultural problems, and we're making great progress. Are we But to say that we've made progress, people say, that means you think it's perfect. I don't think it's perfect. Nothing is perfect.
Nothing's ever going to be perfect.
But look at how well certain ethnic groups are doing in this country.
Let's try and make things a bit better here and there.
Absolutely. I tell you what, Joe, I feel a tremendous sense of gratitude. When my father, you know, even in the 60s, you know, Harold Wilson introduced the Race Relations Act. Actually, that was in the 70s. But there was progressive legislation. That's why I stood for Parliament. I stood for Labour. I thought that, you know, this was a really wonderful thing to do.
Stand.
In 2001, years ago, thousands, millions of white people have wanted to do the right thing and have marched and have campaigned. And I think we've got to a place now where if anybody said, as they used to say to me, you know, with brown skin, that you're slightly inferior, you have a genetic congenital defect relative to white, no one says that now.
I'm very proud that you're able to think that we've made these strides in England. Britain, sorry.
Undoubtedly we have. Undoubtedly, hey.
That's good. That's good. I mean, I only want things to get a bit better, because we're never going to be perfect. I feel I should apologise for inflicting these non-entities on you, and I'd just like to promise that I won't do it again. Now for something much better. Music! Next time on the Dinosaur Hour. I like your ruthlessness.
My ruthlessness gets me into a lot of trouble.
And I was gazing out of the window, and the teacher said, "What are you doing, Claxton?" And I said, "I'm thinking, sir." He said, "Well, stop it."
There are two parts of your brain, the hare and the tortoise. Your hare is racing ahead with ideas and sometimes comes to a blockage, whereas the tortoise tends to be plodding along all along, and you can dip into that without really knowing.
John, you married one of my ex-wives, I think.
I have indeed.
You married Connie Booth.
For about 35 years now, we've been.
Oh, come on.
Do you know what? People are not going to like you if you attack me.
They love it when I attack you.
No, they
can't
don't.
Stand you. Shut up.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified.
I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every